Well, I guess it's officially afternoon. It's just about 12 o'clock. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to session 4, day 3 of APTConnect. We're on the home stretch, but we've got 2 amazing sessions left. So as with always, people are already doing that. Let's go ahead and say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're from. We've got people, which is the blessing of a virtual event, Rich, is we've got you're out of state. We have people from Hawaii and Montana. We had somebody from Florida the other day, so it's been really great to see people all over, as well as all of our near and dear WMFHA members from across the state. So that's the one kind of blessing to a virtual event is we don't have to worry about anybody driving anywhere. So we've got a great session ahead of us here today. We gave Rich a little 1-hour breather so he could catch his breath after the 12 Cs of leadership, but he's back to talk about another topic for you all. And so just, and everybody, I'm recognizing all of your names. You've been with us all week. You know this. Exit full screen, open up your chat window, be engaged in the chat with us. If there's stuff that Rich says that you are liking like that, you can put questions in Q&A. He says he will have a little bit of time today to couple of questions. Rich has already also gone into the discussion boards and put in some discussion posts. So make sure you check out those boards. It's a great way to engage in discussions. You can even start them as an attendee. You can start your own discussion. So we encourage you to do that. Following this session, we will give out another $50 Tango gift card. And then we are also going to be going right into our Learn, Connect, Grow leadership panel. And that one, we're going to end the conference in a meeting format. So you'll actually get a chance to see everybody's face. So make sure you join us there. We've got a little bit larger sum of money to give out at the end. Thank you guys all for sticking with us, but it is 12 o'clock. So we are a Get Started on Time organization, and I'm really happy to have Heather Edwards with us with Apartment Advantage Staffing. They are a great partner of ours. They are a great supporter of the association, and we absolutely could not put on this conference without our amazing supplier partners. So Heather, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Tricia. We're very excited to be here today to assist and sponsor this wonderful class. Welcome, everybody. I hope you have been having an awesome week, learning lots of great things. And I know that your presentation today, your NOI strategies as we emerge from the pandemic, are going to probably give you lots of wonderful things to use for the future months coming up as we wrap up the year. As she mentioned, I am Heather Edwards, the Marketing Training Director for Apartment Advantage Staffing. We have been the Pacific Northwest premier apartment staffing partner since 2003 when we opened in this area. We opened our office in Portland in 2006. So for those of you out there that do have communities in both locations, we do have staffing options for you in both locations as well. We do provide temporary to permanent and permanent placement staffing, and we do service the apartment industry exclusively. So the great thing about that is we are trained, knowledgeable, we've been on site, we've been in your shoes. We too have worked this entire time as the rest of you through this pandemic that we've been working to emerge out of. And I think that that is truthful in the sense that we really know where you're coming from. So, and we want to provide great staffing for you in the process of coming out of that. Again, fair housing, landlord-tenant law, knowledgeable about day-to-day activities. That's what our team is going to bring to the table for you. In addition, we also have a great program that we had started a few years ago that I think would be an excellent thing to keep in mind for future reference for those of you that are struggling, as most of us have been, with those labor shortages and getting people to want to get back to work. We have our Quick Start program, which that information is available on our website, so you can always check that out. And the idea behind it is that you can bring an applicant to us that you have been interested in considering, whether you're in the process of hiring them, whether you are just kind of curious about them, want to test them out, see if they're going to be a great fit for your community. If so, you bring them to us, you kind of get that test drive option. And then if it turns out you do fulfill the background aspects, you book a couple weeks with us, you decide it's a great fit, then you can go ahead and basically continue your hiring process, and there's no permanent placement fee, but you've been able to get them out there, get them working, and see them in action. So again, we can cover a day, a week, a month, whatever works best for you. We encourage you to book early for holiday season. We know it's just around the corner, so if you'll need anything for that, do please let us know. But as always, we want to be here for you guys. So again, we're reliable, we're flexible, and we're consistent, and really we are here to assist you with whatever we can. So reach out to me. I know Trisha is going to go ahead and put my contact information. I'm on the WMFHA website. You can reach out to us via our website, whatever works best. But with no further ado, here is Mr. Rich George, who is the founder of Blue Door Apartments. And today he is going to be our NOI coach. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Heather, for your sponsorship. And I want to remind, I think this is a lot of the same audience that I had about an hour ago. Hopefully you guys also got a chance to attend that emerging leaders session. I popped in for part of it and then had to come get ready here. But you guys have got a really, just a great conference that's been emerging the last couple of days. I've been popping in and out when my schedule allows. But thank you to Heather, and her quick start program really intrigues me. It's something I'm strongly encouraging many of my companies to do. I think for those of you that aren't familiar with it, go see that. And I see Heather that somebody says that they have one of your awesome team members on their site right now. So that's a fantastic thing to hear as well. So I want to move us forward here. And this time we're not talking about such a soft skill as leadership. For those of you that missed the 12 Cs of an exceptional leader, that one was, we showed some movie clips. It was a lot of fun, but now we're going to talk a little bit about where the rubber meets the road and how, on this day of leadership that you guys are talking about and that you guys are experiencing, how do we convert that? When I did jump into that emerging leaders session, I heard Isis and Annie and Jessica and Jesse all talking about how, as they've emerged, they left some industries where it was all about the money. And I get that. We want to have a cause, we want to have a reason. And in my last session, I talked about we need to find our passion for what we do. And providing housing, it's pretty easy to find that passion. But on the same token, I wear a shirt where I'm the NOI coach. So I also want to make a profit. And there's a way where we can delicately balance those two things, where we don't necessarily prioritize one over the other, but man, when we don't make a profit, our paychecks don't cash, they bounce. So it's really important for us to understand. And as we are, I hope, exiting this pandemic, we need to talk about how we think about NOI. Because if you remember, I introduced myself in the last session as Rich George, the NOI coach, and I'm a recovering property manager. I started off as a groundskeeper, and I worked my way up to being a CEO in this industry. But what I've learned over the time, the 30 years that I've spent in this industry, is that the opportunities that were presented to me is because I presented return on investment. I'm going to say that again. The opportunities that were presented to me was because I gave a return on investment to the investors that I worked for. And it's important for us to understand that that's a significant piece. Heather is our sponsor today, and she's all about one of my books, Hire the Best, Ditch the Rest. It's about putting the right butts in the right seats. For those of you that we were talking about books, and I need to go back and append my post on the discussion board because I put some great books there, but now one hits my head, and it's Good to Great. If you've not read that book, it's a great book because it is all about not only putting the right butts in the right seats, but having them do the right things. It's an important piece for us to understand, because if we want to find NOI, we need to realize that we're not going to do it by having the most clever marketing strategy and by giving the best promotions and having the best product. Those are all things that are going to help us, but without the right people, we're never going to find that NOI. So as we talk today about NOI strategies, we're going to talk a little bit up in the ether, and then I'm going to give you 3 examples of things that I've found with my clients as an executive coach and a consultant in our industry. I've got clients all across the country, and we are trying to find those ways that we can improve NOI, even though we're coming off of some years. I know they're in the Washington market. I've got a couple of clients there. that you guys have had a couple of really good years. As we came out of the crisis of '08, a lot of people call that the housing crisis. It really wasn't. It was the crisis of credit. And that's a bigger conversation than we can have today. But it really is a crisis of the cost of money. Now, as we emerged from that, we really fell into a pit. And as you climb out, it's easy to be a hero when things are going bad. And when things start turning around, we can be successful. But sometimes we're successful accidentally, not intentionally. You heard me say that a couple of times in our last session. Are you successful because of what you do or in spite of what you do? You have to really decide, are you going to do something different and unique? Because folks like yourself, the 140 people or so that we have in the room right now, you're different. You're better than the average bear. Because there's a lot more than 140 leaders in the multifamily industry in the greater Seattle and the state of Washington, right? They're not all here today. So just because of that, you guys have a competitive advantage. And I've always said, if you're in a marketplace where there are 8,000 apartment homes, or no, I take that back. There are 10,000 apartment homes in your sub-market, but there are only 8,000 renters. All things being equal, you should all be 80% occupied, right? But all things aren't equal. What that really means is you got to be 20% better than those other schmucks. And you can do that very easily just by being engaged and doing what you do intentionally, because there are so many people in our industry and our business, and it creates a whole industry for me, for consulting and coaching, that are just on autopilot, that are continuing to do things the way that they've always done them. And that's the reason it's important that when people go on strike for rent, when they start to say, we don't want to pay our rent because of a pandemic, and they start using this as an excuse, and then our government gives them all of the reasons in the world not to, and supports them with eviction moratoriums and all of these things that we've been facing the last couple of years. How do you get through that? Now, I shared with you, I'm now an investor. And I will tell you, and I'm going to knock on wood somewhere because this might come back to bite me, but of all my units, not a single one took advantage of the eviction moratorium and abating rent. Not a single one. That's not only of the self, I've got a small portion of my portfolio that I self-manage, and then because the properties are too small really to hire folks like you to manage them. And then another part of my portfolio, I have folks like you managing it, but I have great managers just like you that stayed on top of it. You can do that. So as we go through this session, I really want to have you focus in on how much are we making? Where are we spending? What are we saving? How are we thinking like our owners? Because, you all entered this virtual room as phenomenal property managers. You're great at managing properties. I have no doubt in that. But you're going to go out of this virtual room thinking like investors and being partners, because the way you think matters. If you think like an employee, then you'll behave like an employee. And the question is, are you going to be a resident advocate? Are you going to be an employee advocate? Or are you going to be an investor's advocate? And the last one is the right one. Now, I'm not saying that, hey, let's stick it to our residents and let's stick it to our employees or our coworkers. It's not about that. We provide service for our residents and we treat our employees well because that serves our investors. You need to understand that the way you think about what you do, we got to stop thinking, oh, how can we get this part cheaper? How can we convince this contractor to do the work for 10% less? How can we raise the rent? These are all things that we do to increase our NOI. But really, we need to be thinking about what steps can we take where it's easier to raise the rent? How can we strategically put ourselves in a situation where we are spending less? Because as an investor now, having grown up in this business and not being an investor, working for investors, It wasn't until I started treating myself like their partner that I really crossed that bridge from being an employee to being someone who had the potential to partner. And my first investment was something that was very fortunate, but somebody had decided that an owner, an investor had decided that they really could not compensate me to the level that I should be compensated. And so they gave me a fraction of a property, fraction of a percent. But it started me on my journey. It's the way that you start to think, because they realized if I was incentivized like they were incentivized to make money, that we would both be thinking the correct way. Murray Walker says, if you don't trust someone to look after your investments, then they shouldn't be doing the job for you. In the last session, I said I wanted to be the most credible resource, and credibility is what matters. And when your investors look at you as the most credible resource, then they will continue to invest in you. They will invest in paying your management fee. They will invest in paying your salary. They will invest in your professional development. And then eventually they will invest with you. So it's unfortunate, but we're in a world, and I'm sure nobody on this call does this matter to, but I need to talk about what NOI is, because you would be surprised at how often I walk into a room with this shirt on, into a room filled with property managers, and people look at me and they say, what's NOI? It's always so disappointing to me, because if you don't know what NOI is, you need to figure it out. Net operating income. It is really the result of an investment. Cassandra says, get your CAM and you'll know what NOI is, right? You'll know what NOI is. Absolutely. And even if you don't have it, learn it before you go to CAM, because you're gonna have a tough time with that class if you don't get it. So it's a great program, by the way. We're in the process. I'm a senior member of NAAEI's faculty, and actually sitting on a committee with Sloan, where she and I are involved in rewriting some of that curriculum. She's been a great subject matter expert from us and giving us a different perspective from an association standpoint. So it's been a pleasure to serve with her. But let's talk about what net operating income is, so that we are all on the same page. It really is the sum total of all of your income minus expenses equals operating expenses equals your NOI. So if you're trying to read a financial statement, you're going down, you have all your income up here at the top, minus your day-to-day non-unique operating expenses equals NOI. Now your financial statement continues on from there, because from there, we subtract out our asset-related expenses, things like capital expenditures, pay our mortgage, put money in our reserve accounts, and that's what brings us to our cash flow. In fact, in your resources, I want to show you, I just noticed a comment from Haley. Cam taught me all of these for the first time, and Haley, you're not alone. As an industry, we are behind the curve. Typically investors have looked at us as property managers and say, don't worry your pretty little heads over all this financial stuff. Just put the butts in the boxes and collect the rent. Occasionally plunge a toilet and put a bifold door back on track, but don't worry your pretty little heads over all this financial stuff. And then they incentivized us on getting occupancy. But occupancy isn't the best metric, is it? Economic occupancy is, because that's where we put the money in the bank. Just simply having butts in the boxes doesn't put the money in the bank. So I want to share with you, I'm going to pop up a different screen here. I think I've got it loaded up. Let's see this one. In your resources, I've given you both of these documents. The first one is metrics that matter. We're not going to be discussing this today. This is actually from a session that I did at NAA when I was in Denver 2 years ago. And these are metrics that matter. So I figured this would be a great resource for you to have. And then I also have this resource, which is really what we were just talking about as it relates to the cash flow formula. If you go to the second page of this, income minus operating expenses equals the line minus your asset related expenses equals your cash flow. So this is also a great tool for sharing this with other members of your team, because as a leader, what should we be doing? We should be leading people and empowering them and helping them understand why. So these are both resources as leaders that you can use to pay it forward. These are located in the additional resources tab of this session in the platform. So please go download them while they are there for you. And if you have any questions about them, my contact information is on there, and I always love chatting about them. So please reach out to me. But anyhow, so I'm going to back up one slide here. Income minus operating expenses equals NOI. NOI is also referred to as the line, and it is the thing that is so important that I took the moniker 15 years ago as the NOI coach. We subtract from NOI our asset-related expenses, and then we get our cash flow. And a lot of people say, well, why isn't cash flow more important than NOI? Because cash flow is really distributable cash. It's what our owners get to put in their pockets. Isn't that what they really want? And trust me, yeah, they want cash flow, but they want NOI because NOI, and write this down somewhere, NOI is directly correlated with value. NOI is directly correlated with value. So if NOI goes up, value goes up. If NOI goes down, value goes down. And remember, again, for those of you that have your CAM, it is something that you learn is that there are 4 elements to an investment. There's growth, income, risk, and liquidity. So growth is, say you're buying a piece of stock. I buy a piece of Google stock. I buy it at $10 and it grows in value to $100. That's growth. Or I buy it at $100 and it goes to $10. That's growth. It's just called negative growth, right? Income, well, let's skip income for a minute. Risk in our business, if I buy a piece of stock, the company could, find themselves in a lawsuit and go belly up. They could, have a class action suit that takes them out of the game. So that's the risk that you have. In our business, risk, it's almost paralyzing. Fire, flood, blood. These are all things that we have to live in fear of as property managers. You all know exactly what I'm talking about. The slip and falls, the trip and falls, the water leaks, the horrible storms that blow through, or the wind events. I mean, there's just, so much fraud, crime. I mean, you lose a lot of sleep over the risk piece of it, right? And liquidity is any investment, the ability to convert it to cash. So if I invest in a piece of stock, I call up my broker and say, sell, and boom, it's cash, right? But with real estate, I can't sell it like tomorrow. I can't convert it to cash real quickly. What I can do is I can list it, I can pay transaction fees, I can take months of my life and maybe sell it. So with the paralyzing amount of risk and the fact that we can't really convert it to cash, man, the growth and the income better be pretty monumental for this to matter to us, right? They need to overcome all of the negative parts of this investment. And income, I told you I was going to come back for that. If I buy a piece of stock, it's called a dividend, right? That stock pays a dividend. I get a piece of the profits for my fractional share of the company that I invested in. But when I buy multifamily housing or income producing real estate, well, that income, what is it? I'm going to give you guys a hint. It starts with R and it ends with int. Yeah, that's it. Rent. You get the rent and it's every month. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing as long as you're out there collecting it. All right. So we have to collect that rent. It's very important to managing that investment. Like I said, you came into this virtual room as great property managers. You're going to walk out as great investment managers because that's what you do. You manage an investment as leaders, as influencers in our business. You need to be managing the investment, putting the bifold doors on track and putting the butts in the boxes and plunging the toilets and all of that stuff is a necessary part of our job. But we do all of that to manage the investment. So this is something that I wish somebody would have shown me my first week in our business. For every dollar that you bring in, this is based off of the NAA income and expense survey from 2 years ago. The last year's survey has not been finalized yet, so I can't I can't redo this graphic yet, but for every dollar you bring in, I want you to look at this, watch this as it graphically moves forward, because most of us, you know, like I did when I was a groundskeeper, I remember being out shoveling sidewalks with my earphones in and just thinking, looking around going, oh my gosh, these apartments are $700 a month times 250 apartments. Wow, that's a lot of money. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me, wait a minute, that's every month. That's times 12. Oh my gosh. That's a tremendous amount of money. And then I started getting angry that I was making minimum wage. Because I'm like, well, how can I not, you know, how can they make all this money? How can they justify paying me this? Right. But nobody ever told me that this is a very narrow margin business. So this is based off of the NAA's and industry's income and expense survey. So we lose that much of every dollar to vacancy from 2 years ago, but the numbers have changed slightly, but it's about the same. Lose that much to collections and that much to concessions. Look how much of that dollar is already gone just from the rental adjustments, just from losing money. Then we spend that much on our operating expenses. So that piece of the dollar that you see left in 2019, that represented about 47.8 cents. But then we do our capital expenses. You know, we replace those carpets and occasionally place roofs and parking lots and sidewalks, and maybe we do upgrades. That much of the on industry average of the dollar is missing. And that's what we do to pay our mortgage. See that little piece of the dollar that's left? That's our cash flow or our ROI on average as an industry. That little piece of the dollar, that's our cash flow, represents 9.1 cents. So anywhere along here, and I'm going to move my cursor on the screen, you might be able to see my cursor moving. Anywhere along here, if they would have paid me more as a groundskeeper, that black box would have gotten bigger. If we gave away too much in concessions, that box would have gotten bigger. If we would have spent too much money in carpets and in refrigerators and stoves, that box would have gotten bigger. And before you know it, that little piece of that dollar is going to be gone and there won't be cash flow. And now we're asking for our owners to contribute money back to us. We're doing what's called a cash call or a capital call. That's not a good day. So we all need to understand where we fit into this puzzle of making that little piece of the dollar bigger, because I'm sure your investors want you to make that 9.1 cents become 12 cents. And you can do it. You can be on the best side of that equation. You can be bringing the average up, or you can be one of the property managers that's average and you can be bringing that average down. Which do you want to be? You just got to be better than the average bear, right? You got to be 20% better than those folks. So let me tell you why this is important. If this is a company that I told you I do a lot of consulting work, and a lot of my consulting work starts with your lenders. The lenders start to see that you're having trouble paying the mortgage, and they start looking at the writing on the wall, and they say, things are not going well at ABC property. So they'll call me up and they'll say, hey, Rich, we see this asset going in the wrong direction. We think we might be on the road to foreclosing upon it. So we'd like for you to, before we to make that decision, to go out and do an evaluation and let us know what's going wrong. Let me tell you, I've done hundreds, probably thousands now of these reports for lenders. And if they call me for one of your properties there in Seattle, I'm going to go online, I'm going to do my research. Then I'm going to ask them for your financial statements for the last 3 years. And I'm going to be able to tell you 90% of what's going wrong at your property just from those two events. But then I'm going to fly out and I'm going to visit your property. I'm going to see what's going on. Every one of those reports, greater than 90% of them, the number one problem is the people. That's the reason what Heather does and what you've been hearing about as you started the day talking about hiring with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's why you heard from emerging leaders before and how we're talking about increasing leadership, because if you lead people the right way, that won't be your problem. And when I say the problem is the people, it's not the butts that are in the seats, it's the way they're being directed. People are being successful or not because they aren't being directed and inspired in the right way. So that's the reason we're talking so much about leadership today. Manuela says you're only as good as your weakest link. You're absolutely right. Your next raise, your next promotion, your next opportunity has very little to do with your pedigree. has everything to do with who you surround yourself with. If you take nothing else away from this session, know that. Surround yourself with the best, you will be the best. So what you're seeing on the screen, this is a company that I got involved with, and they had an entire portfolio that the bank, it was all financed through a series of connected loans that were cross-collateralized. And the bank was thinking, we may have to take away this whole portfolio. And this is a company where the grandfather started the company, the father was there, and now the son was running the company. And they had owned these properties, they built, developed, owned these properties for 30 years. And they had just been doing business the way they had been doing business. Now, if you look at the time frame here, 2008, 2009, if you recall, this was in Southeast Michigan, in the Detroit area. And Southeast Michigan, they always are the first ones to go into a recession and the last ones to come out because they are so driven by the automotive industry. And so as this property started to fall, and this is year over year portfolio growth of NOI. It was about in 2009 that they reached out to me and said, Rich, we need you to look at this portfolio. We think we might have to take the whole thing back. And they had approached this family company and said, you guys have to come up and you've got debt that's expiring, meaning they had to refinance all their debt, and you don't have NOIs to support the values that you owe. So what are we going to do about it? You're either going to come to the table with tens of millions of dollars, or you're going to turn the keys in. You're going to give the keys back to us here at the bank. The bank said, you know what, we got an analysis done by Rich, and this happened to be a company I was familiar with the principals in it. They didn't like me very much at this point in time, but basically the bank said, if you engage Rich and you work with him, because we really want you to succeed, then we'll give you some forbearance on your loan for the next 18 months. And that's exactly what happened. So the difference here between 2009, where you see that it fell so far, and 2010, which if you look at the industry's income and expense survey, everybody in the country was still falling all the way to 2012, but this company started to rise, and more aggressively and faster than anybody else. And the difference is in 2009, we had a meeting, it was towards the end of the year, and we trained people. Similar concepts to what I'm training you with today. And we said, we're no longer paying leasing commissions. We're no longer paying resident satisfaction bonuses. We're no longer paying any other form of incentive. Your base salary is your salary. However, when NOI grows, you get a bonus. It's a direct correlation. Every percentage of NOI growth that you get a bonus unit. And that bonus unit has value. And it was different values from everywhere from groundskeepers and porters all the way up to regional managers in the central office or support staff in the central office. And look at what happened with this company. Now, you want to hear what's even more impressive, because right now we've got the great resignation going on. In 2010, we had about a 30% turnover of employees, which is lower than average. But at this time, it was even dramatically lower. But from 2011 all the way up to 2019, their employee turnover aggregate for all of those years has been less than 20%. It's the exact same people doing the exact same work, but now they're all compensated like owners. And an average community manager, their average portfolio size or their average property size is about 150 units. The average manager there is making over $100,000 a year. Why? Because they keep finding growth. But more impressively, from 2009, when they were at the worst, actually 2010, they were at the worst because that was still year over year falling, to 2019 at the end of the year, the difference on this portfolio of 2,800 units, the difference in value, $32.4 million. The other thing that happens is in 2010, they were considering turning the keys into the bank and just not being a company anymore. Now their portfolio is over 8,000 units as of today. So they've more than tripled the size of their company in the same amount of time. All of this because we incentivized NOI. So if you think, does this stuff matter? I will guarantee you that it does. Do you want more success with NOI? Because as you raise NOI, that's how you get that $29 million, that $32 million, that $35 million in growth. And every one of you are $1 million managers. And let me show you some things about, we put together a program last year. I got together with a couple of partners and we said, what can property owners do when we can't raise the rents? Because you guys are starting to feel a cap of the rents, right? We saw some great improvements, but we're starting to see that hitting a wall historic, average on the nation. Not real specifically familiar with your markets there, but we're seeing concessions ticking up, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, be careful with concessions. Concessions are like crack cocaine. Once you've had a taste, you can't stop. So just be careful. Don't do that to your marketplace if you haven't already done it. And if you have, figure out how you're going to stop it, because it's a really bad thing. But I'm going to give you 3 examples in the few minutes that we have together here about what you can do. Lena says, oh my God, I know that was a very graphic, but I really hate concessions. I really hate concessions. As an investor, they just are my nemesis. So one of the things that you may be able to do is save water, save dollars. Water has become one of the most significant utility increases for the last 15 years. It's just going up and up and up and up and up, right? So because of that, how can we save water? So for those of you that have assets that are greater than 10 or 12 years old, there's probably opportunity in doing water saving, replacing your toilets, replacing your aerators and your shower heads, and really conserving on your water, looking at your irrigation usage and using smart appliances to control it. There's just so many things that you can do. There's companies that you can partner with that they'll even take the capital expense, because you're like, a lot of you are thinking, and I bet you at the next trade show that you guys have in April, there's a couple of vendors there that can replace those toilets for you. You can do all of those things. By the way, use your members. Really say thank you to all of our sponsors for this program and the ones that aren't here today, but make sure that you are reaching out to members. I know that Tricia had put the membership directory in the chat. Make sure you use that. But when you're saving water, there's all kinds of benefits and upsides to that, besides doing the right thing for our planet, right? And there's a lot of money to be had there, so much that people will come in, they'll make the capital investment, and they'll save in the sharings with you. So let me give you just a breakdown. This is a sample 200 unit property. We're going to continue to use this 200 unit property, but I want to point out a couple of things here. So the capital investment on this 200 unit property is $112,000 to replace the toilets, aerators, and the shower heads throughout the entire property. And what you're actually going to save in water and sewer costs is you're going to have a 60% reduction on this particular property. Your partners will do this analysis for you. You don't have to figure all of this out, but let's just show how it breaks down into dollars, right? So your projected annual utility cost is $82,000 with the full capital investment of $125,000. Your annual savings, if no capital investment, is $25,000, right? So your total monthly savings is $10,000 a month, which equals $125,000 a year, which represents 110% cash on cash ROI, right? At a 10% cap rate, we raised the value of the property by $1.2 million. We're going to come back to that, but I just want to show you how the math works doing these types of initiatives. Nicole's saying there's still free programs to complete these upgrades. There's a lot of incentives on your taxes. There's a lot of stuff. Cheryl's saying that rolling out smart apartments that you can also put in your water devices, your leak detection devices. There's all kinds of things that you can do piggyback on that, which is leading to another one of the examples that I'm going to give you, things that we can do today. Another one is looking for savings in trash. A lot of you have opportunities in your trash can to save money. An overview of this solution is you basically, there are cottage industry out there of waste consultants that they will come in and they will look at, and they'll say on your property, you've got a compactor or you've got, individual cans, however it is, and they will renegotiate for you. The thing about waste is it's gone through wild gyrations over the last 20 years where they've really increased pricing and then it's fallen back down, and they've increased pricing. Well, the problem is that your waste contracts usually are 3 to 5 year contracts that auto renew, and we just stop looking at it. And so if you renewed in one of those high cycles, they're never going to come back to you at the next cycle and say, oh yeah, it's dropped 75%. They're just going to continue charging you what they charged you. The other thing is along the way, the people that sat in the chair before you, they got sick of one day. They came in after Christmas and all the dumpsters were overflowing. So they called up the waste company and said, yeah, we need 2 10 more yard cans. And then you have that level of service all year round when you don't need it all year round. So those are the kinds of opportunities that sit out there. I've got a good friend who's a waste consultant, and the guy lives in $1 million house simply because he comes to people like you and says, let me dumpster dive and bring you a backup program. And if I find savings, we'll split it in half for the next 3 years. And then you'll get all the savings after that. This guy lives in, like I said, a multi-million-dollar house based off of trash, just finding you savings and trash. So here's a breakdown that Ken did for me. It's a good friend of mine. On that same 200 unit property, your annual projected savings, there's no capital cost here. This is just renegotiating what you already have, is about $15,000 a year. Your initial savings from discrepancies and everything else, about $22,000 a year, right? That means your annualized year over year increase is $37,000. It's 108% return on investment. I don't know about you. If I'm your investor and you come to me with these ideas and you say, oh, by the way, the ROI is over 100%, there's no question of whether or not I'm going to do this. We always want to get yes, but see, the problem with property managers, we ask our investors, our owners, our bosses, and we say, yeah, I want to remodel the kitchens. Well, why? They're old, they're brown, and they're just ugly. Well, that's not a reason to replace a kitchen. Because if we replace the kitchen, I project that we can get $150 rent increase each month. It's going to cost us $10,000, but that represents an 18% return on investment. Now, as an investor, I'm going, where else am I earning 18%? Yeah, let's do it. You're going to get a yes if you tell me the business reason why we're doing it, not because it's ugly. If you want yes, answer the question. Right? Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. You guys have got some good conversations going on over there. So let's talk about the fourth utility. This is one of those things. Sorry, I gotta back up. Managed Wi-Fi connectivity. This is the fourth utility. But some of you have been in the business as long as I have. We've tried this before and it didn't work. We tried to wire our buildings. We tried to make money from the internet, and we tried to make money from cable and video services, and a lot of us failed. But now it's too late. It's too late for us not to be in this game. For many of you, you guys got a very active market there, specifically in the Seattle and Tacoma areas. For those of you that are going down to Portland, where internet matters. It matters to your residents, and having that universal access network is something that it no longer is an option. I bought the house that you see me sitting in right now 6 years ago. And one of the first questions I found out was, what speed of internet could I get here? Before I ever even looked at the house, I wanted to see what I could get here, because that was an influencing decision for me. So because of that, once we put in that universal access network, we can get what's called facilities intelligence. And these are words that you're going to start to hear more and more in our space. You need to have intelligent facilities. Are you going to have leak detection devices, electronic control valves, freeze detections, foundation sensors? Beyond the fire and smoke we've had for years, but are we going to have connected fire and smoke and HVAC monitoring, surveillance? All of this stuff starts to pile up. I see Lindy says smart communities. Yeah, it's not just smart apartments, it's about smart buildings. And that's the reason it's called facilities intelligence. And we're predicting right now, I just actually talked to one of the reinsurers. There's only 2 reinsurers in our country, that work directly with like Lloyd's of London and people like that. We are in for the next 3 years for some outstanding premium increases on our insurance. And it's going to be devices like these that help us keep that at bay. Where we paid $250 on average last year for insurance, we may be up to $600-700 within 3 years. Imagine what that's going to do to your NOI if you don't mitigate that in some way. And the way you mitigate that is have smarter buildings that will have less claims. So that's just a sidebar effect. We're going to talk about building the revenue from having this universal access network and having not only these smart buildings, but also where we can offer 5G. Because the other thing is, everybody's got the new phones. that have 5G built in, but 5G barely will penetrate a piece of glass. So we need to bring those networks. It's going to become incumbent upon us to bring that in. So having carriers on your rooftop will help you, but even with that, you need to have 5G repeaters because it's a different wave. And so it's something that we have to have the infrastructure that allows that. So, seldom do we wander into success. To be successful, we have to be intentional. And you've heard me use that word multiple times. Because if we don't change, we will become extinct. So talked about 3 things that we can do. 3 things that we can do. And this has nothing to do with raising the rent. Now, can we raise the rent if we provide economical options for internet? Because if you can take the average internet bill, which nationwide is just south of $80, and you can cut it in half for somebody, then you've given them the bandwidth to pay another $30 or $40 in rent. It's what they're already paying, right? So there's options, but now is where we're going to take these 3 decisions that I've been sharing with you, and I'm about to bring sexy back. Yeah, I'm going to bring sexy back. Just like JT did, right? Because this is where it gets sexy, ladies and gentlemen. As leaders, we need to be able to see the things that others can't see. You heard me say that earlier, right? We need to be able to see the opportunities that are out there, the things that we can pick, because the way I went from groundskeeper to being CEO to being an investor and being a partner with investors is that I found them value, but more importantly, I learned how to articulate to them the value that I brought. They stopped looking at me as don't worry your pretty little heads, put the butts in the boxes, and they started saying, what is the most strategic decision that we can bring together? What is the most strategic decision for this investment to create value? So here's how you turn your properties into ATM machines. You do things like the 3 initiatives that I just shared with you. It becomes a little make it rain money machine, right? So the benefits of that universal access network, you've got that managed Wi-Fi, the 5G connectivity. You can layer on top of that streaming video options, facilities intelligence, claim reductions, lower your insurance premiums and your deductibles. I mean, these are all cash money, right? So here's that breakdown for doing this. Now, your cost coming in is a little bit bigger. Now that you see on this one, I've got an area blocked out because the partner that I worked with on this didn't want to, because all of the stuff keeps coming down. We didn't want you guys reverse engineering this and saying, oh my gosh, that's too expensive. But ultimately, on 200 units, to put in a universal access network and some basic smart facilities intelligence features, it's about $220,000. So it's a little over $1,000 a unit. A lot of you are like, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. However, it's a lot of money if you don't think about what it could bring you. Because if somebody told me on all of my units, I could invest $1,100 and then all of a sudden I could bring in revenue because I start selling internet, I start selling a basic video package, some smart apartment features, and I give 5G service to all my residents. That means my total monthly increase is about $140, but my profit is going to be about $63, which is going to boil down to a total annual property at 95%, about $143,000 a year. So I spent $220,000, but in let's say year 2, I get $143,000. That's a 65% return on investment. And then every year after that I pay it off, it's just better and better and better and better. So these 3 simple decisions: water conservation, waste results, managed Wi-Fi. Again, I'm not selling a product here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just using these as examples of things that we can do, even when the market's pushing back on us about paying the rent, right? We're bringing about $4.5 million worth of value at a 7% cap rate, which, by the way, in the Seattle market, your cap rates lately have been more like 5 or 6%. So it's even more than that, but $4.5 million that you can bring to your investors. Now, if you're sitting across from them next year and you're talking about your raise or your bonus, and you say, I brought you $4.5 million worth of value, You know what your salary is. Was that a good ROI for them to invest in you and in your team? You bet, because what can they do with that $4.5 million in value? Now, remember, it's value, so they would have to sell the property to get that. However, they can also refinance their property. So if they increase the value of their property, after about 24 months, they can do a cash out refi and actually pull out $3.4 million. $3.4 million, they can go buy another property and give it to you to manage. And all of a sudden, if you're an on-site manager, you're now a portfolio manager, right? Because those two properties, you're going to do the same thing again next year. In a couple of years, they're going to go out and pull the money out of that, and it's going to be more like $6 million. They're going to go buy a couple more properties. This is what I'm talking about when you're bringing sexy back, because it's all about one property buys another property, buys another property, buys another property. In my investment portfolio, my personal portfolio, that's exactly how it's been. I pulled cash out of my pocket to invest in my first property that I bought. Cash out of my pocket, and I've never taken it back out of that property. However, I bought more properties with that property through good management. That's leverage, ladies and gentlemen. That is what you do. And for those of you that are saying, oh, that's great when you're a rich guy like you, Rich, and I'm not. My name is Rich. It's not an adjective about me. But you know what? I've created wealth. And I created it out of nothing. When I started in this business, I actually started in this business because I was being evicted. And I went and got a job with the company and figured I can stop the eviction. That's where I started. 30 years later, this is where I'm at. And it has very little to do with luck. There's some luck involved with it, but there's also the fact that I thought like an investor. Another great book that we need to add to that list that's going up in the discussion boards. Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a great book. It's your relationship to money. It's the way that you think about money, because you can make it happen. It's just not one of those things that you can sit back and say, it'll come to me. You have to go get it. You have to go take the bull by the horns. You have to make it happen. And when you can make it happen, you can make it rain, and you can bring sexy back. You can bring sexy back to your owners. The big thing is learn to take credit the way that you deserve, because many of you have done these types of things. You just haven't taken credit for it. Go back and pull, what was the annual NOI when you started at the property or properties that you work at? Now, 3 years later, 4 years later, what is the NOI? Hopefully it's gone up, especially in the last few years. It should have gone up. So you increased value. Right? Take your CAM or your CAPS, and you'll learn all the math behind what I just showed you there, because they teach you how to equate NOI. The short version of it is it's NOI divided by a cap rate equals value. And some of you are going, what the hell is a cap rate? Sorry, I shouldn't have said HE double hockey sticks is a cap rate. But that's the kind of stuff that you learn with the professional designations that you can get through WMFHA. Set your goals. If you don't have the budget for it this year, put it in your budget next year and go get your certifications through the Apartment Association. It will make you better at what you do. And you've got a very robust program there in the Washington Multifamily Housing Association. So just go do it. And Tricia, that brings us to the time where we can wrap this up. Before I pass it back to you, I just want to say thank you to everyone. I've been watching your comments. I love the engagement that we've had in both of the sessions. I really look forward to when we can do this live, and because I always love a good reason to come out to Seattle and that area. It's a beautiful part of the country. I live in the second best state in the union. That's Michigan. I have to come visit the best state in the union, right, Tricia? So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Yes, Rich, it has been our pleasure. Thank you so much. You have been a great speaker on behalf of the association and all of our members. Thank you for giving us not one, but two excellent sessions during our APTConnect. And participating in other sessions, the discussion boards. It has really been our pleasure to have you. And I know that everybody is smarter. I think yesterday was Train Your Brain Day. And people have continued to do that. And your session today definitely shows if you educate yourself, you are a better employee, you become a better leader, and you do right by the company that you work for. So thank you for that.
It comes back to your theme, right? Learn, grow, and connect.
Yep.
You know, just attending this stuff doesn't make that happen, but you know what? You can decide that you're going to learn from this, you're going to grow from it, and now go make the connections in that next session where you're able to turn on your videos and actually see each other. A lot of my success has to do with the relationships that I built in organizations just like WMFHA. I've got some great friends, and you know, the word association is there for a reason. You need to associate with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. Rich did a great segue. We are not done yet. We have one more session. Let's not lose the momentum. It is our leadership panel. We've got some great industry leaders that are going to be sharing their experiences with you. And Rich is right. We are doing that in meeting format, so you can see each other's faces. So head on over to that one. But before we do have a $50 Tango gift card for one lucky recipient. So Rich, if you could please pick a number between 1 and 140, I will do my little super sleuth and find that person and announce the winner.
I'm going to pick number 2.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That person is Aline Lucinaro. Hope I pronounced your last name right. Aline, we will be sending you a gift card via email, so be looking for that. Congratulations. And we'll let you guys go really quick. Take a quick bio break, and then do not miss out. Join us over for our next Learn, Connect, Grow series. Also, don't forget to hit the discussion boards. We've been putting up all the books and suggestions that Rich and others have given us. So hit the discussion boards, and we will see you again really soon. Again, thank you so much to Rich, and thank you to Apartment Advantage Staffing and Heather for sponsoring this session.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. See you, everybody.